All right, we are back, people. Another week, another podcast schedule with May officially over. We are into the summer season, and what better thing to kick off the summer than not a Marvel property, but the return of, I wish I could play the song, but I can't because we'll get copyright stricken on YouTube. The Boys are back in town after a 2-year wait since season 2, which was one of the only things that we had during the pandemic. Season 3 of the only show that Amazon puts out that I swear people watch. I really don't know how they even justify having that service, even as a tax write-off, but it's worth it just for the Boys alone. Dustin.
The Marvelous Mrs. Maisel.
Yeah, do people actually watch that? I don't know.
No.
I have no idea. All of that.
Not at all.
Yeah. I don't know. We're going to talk about the Boys, though, because that's what we care about. So, all more on tonight's episode of the Talking TV podcast. You know, it's funny because I had some long-winded answer / approach in order to get into this, but on like some crazy think piece, thought piece. But honestly, I'm just glad that the show is back. Like it's crazy because like 2022 really is, in my mind, as far as media goes, maybe not so much in other things, but as far as media goes, 2022 for me is the gift that keeps on giving, because like all of my personal favorite shows that we kind of were robbed of because of the pandemic have all been coming back, and they've all come back in a line. Like they all started with Succession back in the fall. And even though Ozark kind of fell off for a little bit, I really like the first 7 episodes that they put out before the last 7 came in and probably torched it. Barry season 3, Better Call Saul season 6. And now we have the return of yet another one of our favorite shows. I'm joined once again by Dustin, the Duster Mason, who recapped all 9 episodes of Succession season 3 with me in the fall, as well as teaming up with me to review Don't Look Up and Paul Thomas Anderson's entire filmography. He's back. He's ready to talk about the Boys. But Dustin, before we get started, talk to me about when you first became aware of the Boys. Talk to me about like what it is that you really dug about it and kind of how you like evolved through to now with, you know, as the Boys has gone on.
Well, I started watching it like roughly around the time it was first released, and I really enjoyed it the first season. I think it's definitely a difficult show to adapt to, like, from that comic for sure, tonally, because it could have come off as like a shitty Kick-Ass kind of retread, but it really was its own thing from the first season. But I feel like the second season really kicked it into high gear and like really balanced all the tone it wanted, and the visual effects and the violence just got crazier. And now with this season, without, you know, spoiling too much of what I think about this season so far, it's still as good as season 2, if not better.
Absolutely. Yeah. As far as my whole thing, I have like a really weird relationship with how I got into the Boys, where I remember it was back in 2019. I remember 2019 and just like what an awesome year that was. Like I feel like that year was so good that like we were almost jinxed into the pandemic as a result of it, because of just how friggin' awesome that year was. And I remember it was like, it felt like right after Avengers Endgame had come out. Avengers Endgame had just come out. Game of Thrones was just wrapping up its final season. You know, we were in this really weird space in the culture where it felt like these giant tent poles of monoculture, you know, they felt like they had come to an end, right? And, you know, obviously the whole big thing is like a lot of people were questioning, oh, what is Marvel going to do post Endgame? You know, and now obviously we've been living through the result of that the last couple of years, but it was so fascinating because the show, Amazon almost planned this like strategically, which is kind of nuts because I don't think this was their original intention. But I feel like when the show first came out in, I want to say it was July of 2019, I remember seeing the advertisements for it on Facebook. And at first I thought it was a joke. I'm like, wait, what is this? I'm like, wait, superheroes is like shitbag celebrities and that are like casually murdering people, and like the people who have been like victimized and destroyed as a result of it. I'm like, wait, since when would they, like, they wouldn't actually make a show that would actually try and like dissect superheroes and what we love about them, right? Because really the only thing that we got, I mean, people have been like cloying and saying that like, oh, superhero movies have in other genres, but it's like they still have the same themes. They're still for the most part lighthearted. They're still for the most part for kids, and for the most part a lot of the superhero properties that we'd gotten in the last 20 years up to that point had never really tried to ask the question and tried to be about the bigger things that The Boys ultimately became about. And now, as a result of The Boys, we've seen this litany of content since that's really tried to go for that. But I feel like The Boys, what really made it so fresh and original was the fact that it really was the first thing since Watchmen that was actually trying to dissect and get to the heart of superhero culture, our obsession with them, why we love them so much, why we idolize them. And in a strange way, like the show almost kind of came out ahead of its time, because now in the post-pandemic era where it feels like nobody will even go to a theater unless it's a tentpole superhero movie, you know, Spider-Man and Batman being seemingly the only movies in the 2021 to 2022 school year that it felt like people actually went out to a theater and watched, and, you know, Top Gun obviously now being that. But I guess that's what was so fascinating to me about The Boys when I watched the first season. It was just the idea of, like, aside from all the tonal stuff, yeah, I'll admit, tonally, the first season is easily the weakest, but it was just this idea of, it's like, oh my God, they're actually, like, and it came out at the perfect time, because it's like after Marvel, which was like this really interesting and awesome kind of, like, for lack of a better word, like long form comic book series translated onto the big screen, where there was a continuous story that seemingly started with that first Iron Man and ended with Endgame. And now you almost had this thing that came out and was like asking, oh, you loved all this shit? Well, we're going to explain why, and we're going to kind of point out some of the problems with that. And I just think it did it, like, so masterfully, like so completely masterfully. Like I love every minute of the show. A lot of the characters who I thought weren't the best have slowly grown on me over time. Like, I really think that this show is truly one of the best shows on the air right now. And I thought that even with season 1, like, they didn't nominate it for anything, which I thought was ridiculous, but it really, really grew on me that first season, 100%.
Yeah, maybe I need to rewatch the first season. I'd still think, even if I did, I would think it's the weakest. But it definitely did a good job setting the stage for, like, what it's become. And I think that's fine, you know? Same thing with, like, the Umbrella Academy, which, like, the Umbrella Academy for me, whereas, like, the first season was solid, had some really good moments, but that second season was, like, cool, like really cool and really well directed, and even more well acted. But The Boys is even better than the Umbrella Academy as far as I'm concerned in every regard: acting, direction, writing, visual effects, everything. It's just so good, and I can't wait to get into it. And I take it we're gonna go in order of the episodes, so let's do that.
Well, first I wanted to kind of ask, as far as, like, the whole, like, do you personally, right? Because I mean, I don't know how into the whole, like, kind of the, like, well, I guess just my first question is, like, what's kind of really been your thought process? Because I know we've talked about it a little bit, like, off camera, but, like, your kind of whole thing, I guess this kind of goes back all the way to, like, the Martin Scorsese comments when he first said those in 2019 about, like, kind of like, again, like, it's really difficult to go back to, because just the comments have been taken so far out of context and everything, where people were just saying, oh, Martin Scorsese doesn't like Marvel movies. But, like, what's kind of your thought process on, like, the effects that, like, superheroes have had on movie going just in general, you know? And I guess, do you think that they've had the effects that everybody is hyperbolizing and has been saying?
Well, I don't really think the Martin Scorsese liking or disliking Marvel thing has any relevance to, like, the actual success of superhero films. I think the success of superhero films in general, it's a very vague question I think you're asking, but I'll try to crack it. Um they're the ones making money, those superhero movies, and those are the ones people are seeing, like you're saying. And yeah, I just feel like we have been, especially by Marvel and Kevin Feige in particular, uh, and, you know, DC to a certain extent, but it just feels like the biggest movies always have to be like the superhero movies, and, you know, that's kind of grown tiresome, especially since, like, most of the Kevin Feige movies look and sound and just seem the same all the time, except, like, Doctor Strange 2, which was pretty original in its style. But I feel like this show satirizes it perfectly while also being its own serious story. And I think it's just as funny as it is heartbreaking for a lot of these arcs. I am concerned about a few subplots that are, like, being developed in these episodes that we'll cover. But other than that, I think the satire is pretty on point, like you were asking.
Yeah.
Yeah, so
100%. Yeah, well, that's just the irony of it. The irony of it is that it's an Amazon produced show,
mhm.
and the fact that it's this gigantic media slash pharmaceutical slash, like kind of this thing that we think of like this evil corporation, for lack of a better word, that seemingly got its hands in everything, and how they're kind of controlling the narrative around like the superhero fling. Like the show really did come in at the perfect time. And the strange way is you get this every time, like you get a satire along this line where it almost feels like the real world like lines up to go along with the satire, where it's like I feel like in a strange way, in this weird post-pandemic world, I felt like we were already kind of living in that world back in 2019, but now I feel like it's only gotten crazier as far as like, just the ridiculous amount of admiration and attention that we give. Forget the whole like seeing these celebrities on movies, because that's essentially what the superheroes are, or the soups in this verse are. They're essentially celebrities. And like, I mean, look, we just came off of what? Like, how long was that goddamn Johnny Depp Amber Heard trial? And people were watching that shit like it was a friggin' TV show every single day. So like the show really tapped into something fascinating there as far as just covering that side. And I've said this since day one, where I think the show's greatest strength, besides the satirization and the extreme violence, was I think it always did a good job of having its characters be very morally gray on both sides, where you hated the superheroes, but also the quote-unquote good guys that you were following weren't all really that good, particularly Butcher, where it became very clear after a certain point that he was just willing to do whatever it took, no matter who got in his way to get the job done. And then I always thought it was interesting how you were introduced to these heroes and kind of introduced them in one way, and then you kind of broke down and found out more about them. Like, I love finding out more about A-Train and the Deep and Queen Maeve and all these other heroes. And we even finally got a backstory origin for Black Noir after 2 seasons of him just kind of being there, like just the silent figure in the background. And Homelander, who's consistently been to be the most interesting character since minute 1 of this show. And how after season 2, I famously said after season 2, I'm like, okay, what more is there really to do with this guy? They got him, but they've showed in this 3rd season premiere. I'm like, oh no, we're just getting.
I have a point about that, to like whether or not like is there talks about a season 4, because I'm not sure
yet, but I assume so, because they're not if they are planning to adapt the whole, I mean, they're not going to adapt the whole comic book line, but like they've got like a ways to go as far as the adapting. I know they're going to do the Hero-gasm arc this season, whatever the hell that means. I've very strictly stayed away from following like the comic book storylines of what happens in The Boys, but like I've heard that the Hero-gasm moment, whatever that is a pretty big moment.
Sure, but like in terms of like how long are they going to just keep going with this Homelander charade? You know what I mean? Where it's just like until like he fucking like, spoiler alert, he might lose his mind and destroy the entire world. You know what I mean?
Well, I mean, because that's what the show I feel like has been building to up to this point. Like there were hints of it in season 1, and then they kind of were building to it slightly more in season 2. But it feels like this, I mean, mostly because he even said it to Starlight when she threatened him with the videotape. It's like,
that's what I mean.
Right ahead,
like, when is it? Are we going to see that breaking point near the end of this season? Right. Is my point, or is it a build up to another season and then we gotta like? And
that's a little, and I understand where you're coming from, because I was actually having a little bit of problems with that. It was not really problem, but like it was at the back of my mind going into that 3rd episode specifically, where it's like, I'm like, okay, gloves are off. Like Homelander is basically given the end game of, it's like, yeah, you release that video, then I got nothing left. Yeah. I'm just gonna nuke and kill everyone. And like, I think that's always been the trick, but also the interesting thing about Homelander as a character is the fact that that's something that people have been saying since minute 1. They're like, yeah, this is the evil Superman. This is the Superman unhinged. This is Superman if he didn't have that moral conscience of growing up in Kansas and being that good old American boy. That's always been
a test tube baby.
Exactly. He's a literal.
He's not even Superman. He's a test tube baby.
He's a test tube baby. He
happens to have the powers of Superman,
right?
But he's a sociopath who might be also racist and just everything else.
But what's been so interesting about the character is that the thing that is constantly dictated every action of his is his narcissism, and the fact that deep down he does inherently want to be loved. And twisted and crazy as that presentation has been, obviously the whole Stillwell arc in season 1, and then everything going on in season 2, but now you're at a point where it's like he's really. He clear, like he had that with Stormfront, right? And then you have the whole Stormfront reveal, which I mean, I want to get your take on that too, about whether or not that actually happened or not. But like, you know what I'm talking about. But I feel like we're at a point now where they literally have to be like, okay, they gotta kill this guy this season, because if they make him last another season, like no shot.
how and another flaw that I have with it too, like this isn't going to take that much time, but Giancarlo Esposito, I'll get into another thing with him that's even
Being in
sketchier.
everything.
Yeah, and honestly, I'm kind of getting sick of his like, like sardonic, I don't give a shit attitude.
Right.
Like it's not even that menacing anymore. I feel like it peaked with Breaking Bad.
It
The
did.
Personally, I think there's better performances other than him on Better Call Saul for that matter. But in terms of like he knows like he could get obliterated by Homelander, unless like it's something we don't know where he can't kill Giancarlo for some reason, like in Stranger Things where she can't kill Matthew Modine, you know. So it's like I don't know where they're gonna go. Like they could just obliterate that guy. I feel like he's not gonna live past this season two unless they kill a Homelander off.
Well, that's always been the biggest problem. Is it's like like
Yeah,
that's the constant problem. It's like, yeah, Homelander could literally obliterate anyone that opposes him, and that was kind of what
everybody
was
at
so
all times.
interesting
Yeah.
about the first two seasons, because literally everybody that was in a room with him was like, yeah, he could literally just kill them within 5 seconds, you know.
The
But
one thing that's bothering me about the Homelander thing is not, and it has nothing to do with Anthony Starr. It's just kind of the repetitive writing of like how everyone is always towering in fear over him. And I know that's how they would be, but they got to spice it up a little bit with like they got to have some characters not be complete pussies in front of him to like counter it, like make it more interesting. Like they can still be intimidated, but in a different way, not in a just outwardly like, oh my god, we're gonna cower and do everything. And it's just like getting a little annoying now at 3 seasons in. That's just
I agree.
a minor nitpick for me.
I get where you're coming from. Absolutely. Well, let's break down like what actually happens in this season. At the beginning of this season, these first 3 episodes coming off the last season, and kind of where we're gonna go in this season. So picks up. They're at like some movie premiere for like that Dawn of the Seven movie that they were shooting last season. A very clear and obvious riff on the Snyder Cut, which I thought was still really, really well
That
done.
was Charlize.
Charlize, dude, that was another thing. I turned around, I'm like, okay, like that first episode, like it's also when they had the tiny dude inside the one dude's dick, and then he blew up and ripped him in half. Incredible, like
That's
amazing.
that's the grossest thing I think I've ever seen. I was blocking my screen with my hand. I was like,
That's
get
just
out
another
of
one of
here.
those things where I'm like, they can only pull this off. And like after the love sausage thing in the last season, I'm like, okay, this show they literally can do
Sure,
whatever they
but
want.
like this is like not even, and it just it made me think more about like Ant-Man, and I'm like, why haven't they done that with Ant-Man yet?
Well,
Like
they
that's
can't
insane.
first and foremost because that's super R-rated, and they clearly can't. And what's crazy is they actually did do
They can
something like that.
make him explode someone without like the blood or whatever.
I disagree. I think it's
I-
impossible.
it would
Only
be
because
bad,
you've
but
seen it
like
in other minute. Like I think it would be impossible to do. That's the thing. Like, and
they
that's
could
very,
do it
very like
though.
not at all like in Marvel's quota. But so you're picking up Huey again is working for the Congresswoman who was revealed at the end of last season to have been the head blower up or the head popper as they called it, who blew everyone's
Yeah.
heads up in Congress. You know, and it kind of ends with Huey discovering that she was the head popper and realizing the Butcher was right after Butcher's been having this like back and forth. It's kind of weird also at the beginning of the season where Butcher and the rest of the boys are now working for Huey and that department, you know, bringing in Soups, but they can't really go after the big Soups because the big Soups are still protected by Vought, who is still kind of controlling Congress essentially.
But
And so you
then
have a couple.
what do we find out about Victoria?
We find out that she is clearly like the adopted daughter of Stan Edgar because she was
Slash
wife, which is I don't even know what to make of that thing. I was like,
dude.
what am I watching right here?
Dude.
So essentially, to break it down, so basically what is discovered in the second episode when Huey does some digging into the Congresswoman after he discovers that she is the head popper, he discovers that she was part of this superhero adoption program called Red River, which essentially takes children that accidentally with superpowers that murder their parents. I think they touched on that a little bit actually in that animated spin-off that they did, The Boys Diabolical.
The Roiland episode. Roiland episode. That was fantastic.
That's making me want to go back and watch it. I didn't watch The Boys Diabolical, but that's making me want to go back and watch it now.
I mean, I've seen most of them. They're pretty good. That one was fantastic.
So you're saying if you had to pick one episode out of that entire 8 episodes that they dropped, you would watch the Roiland episode?
For sure.
Okay. Got it. Yeah.
I want to watch that again, actually. But but that's touched upon in that episode, that whole Red River thing. But they take obviously a much more silly and kind of like still dark as fuck, you know, angle with it. But it's a little more lighthearted since it's animated in that Roiland style.
Yes.
Which is definitely up my alley, and I'm a big fan of his.
Yeah, but the biggest thing that's revealed is that she's kind of in league with Stan Edgar, and essentially everything that they've been doing as far as working with Congress and working with the Department of whatever, like superhero containment or whatever the hell, has all been a sham this entire time. And Huey kind of realizes that they need to do it Butcher's way in order to, quote unquote, get a win against the Suit. Which again, it's doing a little bit of retroactive, like kind of shaping up, which again, it's kind of going into a little bit of the problems that I had coming out of season 2, where season 2 ended on such like kind of a definitive note that it felt like I'm like, okay, where do we go from here? And so there's a little bit of backtracking, I will say that, but it all comes to light when Butcher realizes that they may actually have a chance of taking down Homelander once and for all when they discover a secret, potentially a secret superhero killer weapon that ties back to a legacy superhero character from, when did they say he was a thing? Like during World War II through the 80s, a very obvious Captain America ripoff called Soldier Boy, who's portrayed.
And he was the first superhero, I believe.
Yeah, I think that so, world. Something like that. Yeah,
I think they said that as well.
Yeah, portrayed by Supernatural's Jensen Ackles. That's another thing because of Eric.
Ever watched that?
I never watched a single episode of Supernatural.
Me neither.
Yeah, that was one of those shows that it's like every person that I went to college with was like, "Oh my god, you have to watch Supernatural." You have to.
That was on for a while.
Like 15 seasons. I think they got out of it too. It's a much beloved fan show. But so they're clearly setting up for the fact that the trajectory of this season is going to be that they kind of had to retrograde and pull back a little bit after a lot of the development they had. They kind of have to like go undercover again, and they're kind of introducing a lot of new characters, the Soldier Boy character, a couple other legacy characters that showed him, a couple other old school actors. You have Laurie Holden from The Walking Dead as that Crimson chick. You have Sean Patrick Flannery as Gunpowder.
Okay,
yeah, that was Laurie Holden, which was shocking to me because I'm like, oh my God. The last thing I saw her in was as Andrea in The Walking Dead. They completely destroyed that character from the comics. And then remember when she was the Thing's wife from the original Fantastic Four movies who left him because he was made of rocks? Remember that? Yeah,
I remember. That was so bad.
Yeah, the less said about those movies, the better. But but so essentially that's kind of what we're setting up for. Now, like I said, the cool thing about The Boys is that the thing that I like about it is that there's very few shows I find that can really perfect the whole dropping the first 3 episodes at once and then releasing the next couple subsequently over the next couple of weeks, over the next 5 weeks, because there've been a couple shows that have tried that. I think the only other one I should say that made that style work other than The Boys was Peacemaker. I think Peacemaker did that great as well. Another kind of riff and kind of like, a different take and a different kind of exploration on superheroes. But so I guess my first question is like, what did you think of the episodes? Like, how do you think they compare to the previous seasons? And then we'll get into like where do you think they're going to go from there?
Like I said, like this show, similar to Succession, it's so like unpredictable. Just I don't know where it's gonna go. Like I have ideas of where it can go. Sometimes I'm a little bit right, but it really, like, the pacing of the episodes is just phenomenal, and it's just gotten better and better. But like I said earlier in this episode, that I definitely think this season is definitely comparable to the second season so far. I'm not going to say in totality because we haven't seen all of the episodes yet, but this is definitely heading in the right direction as far as I'm concerned. Except the ending of episode 3, we will talk about. I just will say that. But
absolutely.
I definitely am a fan of like how they, say similarly to how they, introduced the last season with the first 3 episodes. Like I was just like, oh my God, I'm just totally in, like the penis thing aside. Like it was a great scene and well done. Like, and there's so many things you didn't even really talk about Butcher yet. Like he gets to try the compound.
We'll talk about it. Yeah, bring it in. Like kind of where we start off with Butcher this season. It seems like Butcher's turned over a new leaf. It seems like he's trying to actually do something different. He's trying
Karl Urban is so good.
He's fantastic. Him. I think Karl Urban might be the best in these 3 episodes that he's been in the entire show. I've loved him since minute 1, but like
he's been like one of the best. Like besides Anthony Starr, he's really the star of this show, Karl Urban, and his shtick just doesn't get old to me. And he's like one of the unsung great actors of our time. Like I feel like he's just kind of impeccable in everything he's in.
I agree. I've never seen a bad performance from him just in general. And he imbues that character Butcher because that's always been one of the interesting dynamic, the most interesting dynamic to me on the show. And they even get into it at the end of that first episode is how Butcher and Homelander seem to be opposite sides of the coin, where that was the thing that made their interaction at the end of the first season so fascinating, is the fact that, again, like, they hate each other so much, but like, are they that different where they've both kind of been screwed over? They've both kind of been, used and manipulated by the powers that be. They've both done absolutely horrific things, and they're not good people. You can kind of relate to Butcher a lot more than Homelander, but Homelander still has those moments. But like, I thought it was so fascinating how at the end of that episode, when Homelander tries to ask Butcher where Ryan is, that's the other thing too that they now have in common as well, is the fact that they both have this connection to this kid, where this kid is all the Butcher has left of his wife, who was kind of his motivating factor for those first two seasons. And then you have Homelander, who actually has a son and has a legacy, for wildly the wrong reasons. But like, I thought that was so interesting how they both are talking. And he's like, don't you just like sometimes want to just, destroy everything and stand over everyone? And he's like, absolutely. And I thought that was so interesting because I think that was something so different, because what's always been so fascinating about Butcher is he's always been on this like hell quest to just get everything done. And at first you thought it was because of everything that happened with his wife and everything. But as you learn more in season 2, as you got more context around it and more flashbacks, like, he's always kind of had a little bit, and you found out more about his dad, he's always had a little bit of that dark side. And that's always been kind of not my problem, but always like a nitpick that I had with it, is I'm like, Butcher's awesome, don't get me wrong, but I'm like, but I feel like they're only scratching the surface as far as just how crazy this guy could get. And I'm definitely thinking that we're gonna get that this season, because I'm just based off what we've gotten in these first 3 episodes alone, I'm like, okay, like we're going for it now. We're really going for it.
The thing that I'm like, I don't know how they would execute this, but like, I have a feeling he's gonna get like addicted to that shit.
That's what I'm thinking. Like, it seems that way.
He's gonna maybe get addicted to it, and like the side effects, we've already seen a little bit of that and how weird that is. I have a hot take myself. I think that kid is like such a shitty character and such a shitty like plot device and such a shitty actor, and oh my god, like he's so lame. But like, Carl Urban saves those scenes, I'll say that.
Yeah, he does. I'm just going to be interested. Like, I mean, I will say that the scene at the end of the 3rd episode was a little bit rushed. That could have been taken a little bit more drafts, a little bit more takes on the script, where it's like, you've built these characters up as like having this like interesting bond, and now he just hates him out of nowhere because
that line was just so out of place.
That kind of came out of, like, I understand that he's mad at Grace. Yeah, I understand that he's completely mad at Grace for her kind of involvement in the Soldier Boy thing and for her not telling him. And like, he definitely was very rightfully pissed at her, where it's like, so we could have had a chance to take these guys down a while ago, and now because of you've directly prevented us from being able to do that. So like, that was pretty justified, but like, I definitely don't know if his kind of like his rage against the kid was justified, and that's why that kind of just came out of nowhere, and why I wasn't like the biggest fan of that. As far as the rest of the characters, like Frenchie and Kimiko, they're still kind of there. I don't really know what's left to do with those characters. I feel like they're kind of just spinning their wheels and coming up with stuff.
I like the guy that plays Frenchie.
The actor who plays Frenchie is great. The thing, I will say this though, they definitely improved on Mother's Milk, because Mother's Milk was a character that I just, outside of the stupid name, I really wasn't sure what kind of the impetus of that character was. But then we started to get a little bit more about him in season 2, and this season 2, where it's like the way that they kicked that off with his arc of kind of like where he's kind of like addicted to the action, and once he hears Soldier Boy's name, he like a switch flicks.
Yeah, I kind of forgot about his like whole thing with Soldier Boy, so that's why I might have to rewatch it, because I like, this show hasn't been on for like 2 years.
It's been 2 years,
like,
yeah.
So I might have to like, I didn't rewatch any of the episodes. I thought I could, but the whole thing with the Soldier Boy thing, I might have to rewind my mind about that. But I think the whole thing with him, how the 2nd season ended as well, where it's just like he quit the whole thing just to be with his wife and kid, and then we find out in this season
his wife divorced him. Like that was where it really became obvious.
For some white weirdo,
they're pulling it back. They're retroactive. They're retrograding here. They're definitely.
And then they have that guy. They specifically show him during the like Homelander speech at like his his big birthday bash. When he's going on that tirade on television, and like the guy's like, "Yeah, oh my god."
Yeah,
like,
that was troublesome.
So that guy's probably going to be bad news for this fucking season. But other than that, Mother Milk's a good actor. I like that actor, Laz Alonso.
I've told you since day one, the biggest kind of crazy thing for me to coming around to that guy is the fact of when I saw the actor's name, because I recognized the actor's name, I'm like, wait, that's the side villain from the 4th Fast and Furious movie. The dude who supposedly killed Letty, the Michelle Rodriguez's character, the first time, and then Vin Diesel rammed him with the car. I love the fact
he was in Avatar, right?
No, I don't think he was.
He wasn't in Avatar?
No, I don't think he was. He may have been. I would have to go back and check, but I don't remember seeing him there. But
he was one of the Na'vi, I thought.
Maybe. Wait, was he the one that
No, he was like the guy who was giving Sam Worthington shit.
Oh, wait. I think you're right. I think that was
him. I'm absolutely correct.
Oh, no, you're 100% right. No, you're right. You know why? I kept thinking that was Wes Studi. But Wes Studi, I'm pretty sure, is her dad. So it was Zoe Saldana's dad in that movie. So yeah, that actually would make sense. Oh man, that's crazy though. Good shit. Good call.
Yeah, that's the guy from Avatar. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, you're on that. So biggest thing for me going forward is I want to like because they're very clearly setting up that like, okay, they're gonna get to Soldier Boy somehow, And the other thing too, also that I've kind of like questioned about this show is I'm like, okay, are there ever gonna be is Starlight and then this new kid that they introduce who is I feel bad for that guy because that character is only there, the Supersonic or whatever, that character is only there to create bullshit like romantic between Huey and Starlight for when there doesn't need to be at all because he needs to separate because Huey of course needs a reason to separate from Starlight and be apart from her for a bit so he can come back at the end and realize, oh no, I missed you were right about everything, which sucks. I thought Huey and Starlight were like, it was cool like actually seeing them like in a relationship and seeing them like kind of, for lack of a better word, just being a regular domestic couple that then has to go out and deal with all this crazy superstar paparazzi bullshit and all that. And so I think the biggest thing for me is like where kind of I think it literally is all going to rest on Soldier Boy, who is clearly being set up as this. I don't know if he's going to be a plot device or what kind of a character he's going to be, but the whole thing that's been hinted at is that Soldier Boy is going to have a part to play as far as in relation to Homelander. And also, we obviously know that he also has something to do with that weapon, whatever it is, that supposedly can kill a superhero. Because as we know, obviously, Soldier Boy is not dead. He's very much alive and being held in stasis somewhere, but we don't know where he is, and we don't know what this weapon is that can kill him, if it's even capable. Could it even be Soldier Boy? That's the weapon that's capable of taking down Homelander. Who knows? Like, we don't know. So, like, that's kind of what I wanted to ask you about, is it's like, where do you think we go from here, And I guess the question is like, when we end this season, because this I think is going to be the make or break season, because we usually see this with TV shows when they come to like their 3rd season, is this kind of shows where they have legs, is do they kind of introduce a new development that actually is worthy of continuing into season 4, or do you think that they kind of are left spinning their wheels and you're kind of realizing, oh no, they're just going to keep doing the same thing over and over again, where the boys are going to get to the end of the season and then they suffer a loss, another setback, and they're on the run again, and now they got to regroup again, Because I was feeling that way a little bit in the 3rd episode, not so much the first two, but that 3rd episode,
the end
I was definitely feeling that.
Especially with the whole like fuck a love triangle. It's a love square by the end of this episode. But
right.
With Homelander, you think the boy band guy is going to be trouble, which he probably will be. I don't think Huey and Starlight are sadly going to end up together by the end of this season due to lame writing. But fucking Anthony Starr just out of nowhere just says, okay, and we're a couple, and she just agrees with it now. I don't know where that's coming from. I really want them to explain that in the upcoming episode.
Well, the biggest thing,
character usually doesn't make that dumb mistakes, in my opinion. But like, that's a dumb. She was doing good the first few episodes, but then that last scene happened, and I'm just like, come on, really? You had to tie it into the first scene where she's doing her hand in the back. It's like stupid.
It's like, we get it.
Exactly.
Yeah, I was just that was the one where I'm like, yeah, I don't know, and also I don't know. I feel like they're kind of leave the Congresswoman stuff to the side. I felt like they kind of like. I don't know. Did that feel like a little bit rushed to you, where they kind of just rush past that, and it's like, okay, so now
I thought that was deliberate. Yeah.
but
Because I
it's like,
think they're gonna get more into that for
yeah,
sure.
I hope so because like the Congresswoman, I
They
thought it was
have
like
to explain that
I
because
thought it was
she's not gonna
so
be a clear-cut villain. She's not a clear-cut villain
right, which I like.
that
I thought they were gonna make her a
Nadia.
clear cut villain, but they very much have made her more of a morally gray character that like Giancarlo was clearly like manipulated, but like that
She's
was
not good, but
no,
she's definitely a victim in
yes,
every
100%,
regards
one
because
hundred
she was
percent,
because I was we only see a little glimpse of it of their relationship and how like she got adopted or whatever the fuck.
right.
But I have questions, okay? She got
Well,
it.
my first question is that daughter of hers that Huey has met is that Esposito's kid?
Yes, it's
Like,
clearly his
oh my
kid. It's
god, like
clearly his kid.
I don't, dude,
They
I don't know
clearly
how I
have a
missed that.
daughter together,
I don't
and
know how I missed that because like I saw them cuddling. I'm like, okay, so it's like a
they say that in
father-daughter
the scene where
relationship,
it's
but
just
like,
it's your father and it's your hey, say bye to hey, hi to mommy or
oh
whatever. It's
my
just like they're
god,
fucking yeah, and
oh
it's like
my
so what did he do? He
god.
adopted her and groomed her and then secretly married her and then no one knows like who the husband is?
Yeah,
Like who
that's
is
kind of
her
a little bit of a
husband?
deliberate thing where it's like, so wait, the head of Vought and the congresswoman that is clearly like this whole thing is connected, and no one's been able to figure that out. Like, it would have been one thing if it's like, okay, somebody found out and they had to like kill them or whatever, but like like not one PR person, like the Colby Minifie character, she doesn't know about it. Like nobody
He's
knows about
annoying.
this. Yeah, that character's pointless. But
She's pointless. She's only there to just be like a repetitive, like I said, like just be like cowardly and then an asshole to everybody else, and then pull her hair out. She's a
yeah.
shitty comic relief
And the
character.
friggin' the PJ Byrne moment in the toilet, I'm like, okay, this is obligatory. We have to have this in there, you know, like the gross out stuff. I think for me, the most twisted thing probably was not the final Homelander speech where he finally comes out and is basically like kind of just goes off on camera, was the one where he literally forced the girl to kill herself. That was, I'm like, oh man, like we're really getting into this territory.
That was
right
the
now.
scene where I was like, "Fucking yes."
Yeah.
Like,
I'm like, well, because he sits there, he seems so bored at one moment. He literally talks her off the ledge and is like, you know what? You should. And he's like, you know what? You're going to. And then he like
yeah,
flashes the lasers, then you see her fall, and then the blood splat. I'm like, and that's the first time
the
too where like
guts and shit.
they showed you like the blood splat. I was like, oh shit, we're really going for this, you know?
Yeah, and he killed the Jew for Stormfront.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah,
He
she was
did.
Jewish.
He totally did. That's right. Oh my! Wow, I didn't even put that together. Yeah, that's the thing. There's so many different layers. Like I'm paying attention, and there's still shit that's like going over my head. I don't know what it is, but it's like. But then, so okay, the Stormfront killing stuff. First off, like were you expecting Stormfront to be back because they had made a pretty big deal
No,
that Nia Cash was not going to be in this season at all after the whole Nazi
no.
reveal, and then. Which, by the way, good call. I forgot
I
to.
thought she died.
Yeah, that's the thing.
To be
I
honest
thought
with you,
she was. Well, she wasn't dead yet.
she
But they made
wasn't
it
dead,
seem
but
like
I thought she was gonna die. Like,
well, they
why
made
would
it
they
seem
keep
like
her?
they were gonna put her in like some regeneration chamber and keep her for later on, you know. And even
And it
even
was pointless how they used her this season. I thought that was a little too gratuitous.
I agree. I don't really know what the point of bringing her back was, especially when it's like,
for that
she
brief time.
killed herself. First of all, I was like, how would a soup even kill themselves? I thought they're supposed to be invulnerable, you know. And so, I mean, they're not, but
Well,
like
they can die. What do you mean?
But they can die, but I feel like after the first season where Huey blew up Translucent by shoving the bomb up his butt, I feel like they've kind of been playing fast and loose with that, where it's like, okay, so some superheroes are invulnerable, but then they had like the stupid moth guy in that third episode in the flashback scene. He got blown up by a missile or something. Like, I don't know. I also feel like they're kind of going out of their way to like make the superheroes like a little bit too deliberately like stupid. Like before, it was a situation of where it's like, oh, nah, the soups are just like fucking up like regular people, but like they also happen to have superpowers. So, but I feel like now it's like they're kind of just playing fast and loose with it, where it's like, oh, the superheroes are just dumb. Where it's like, okay, I understand that they're actually that they are not that you know they're not gonna be able to tell what's going on in the heat of battle, but like they should clearly be able to tell who the enemy soldiers are and who the civilian, like who is.
Well,
I
bought into it. I bought into that and that part of the story because, especially since it was being told from her perspective, so of course they weren't going to look good and look terrible in that. But they were not like the Seven. They were like the fucking,
They're
they were
payback. They're the
they were
D
the
squad. They were like
original
the
like
build up to the 7.
squad.
Yeah.
So they like it's like the original like NBA or
That's
MLB
fair.
where it's
They're
like
like the
all these
Suicide Squad almost. They're expendable.
yeah, not even just expendable. It's just they were old fashioned and old
Yeah.
school, and they didn't give a shit about anything, and they were jackasses. And like the 7 is like this corporate backed thing that's like very controlled by the company and
Yeah.
like what goes on, and like they can't really get away with enough, the kind of stuff that they were doing in war. You know what
Yeah.
I mean? It's
Just a
like
couple more things about that scene too. So first off, the young Stan Edgar and the Giancarlo Esposito impersonator. I thought that was weird, but also we finally got an origin for Black Noir. Finally, like
that was so odd.
yeah. And that kind of just came out of nowhere where he's the mask off and he said like, oh, the mask should be on, like kind of, again, getting into a little bit of the racism on the 80s, which by the way, little bit like they're handling it well. I have an eye on it though, where I'm like, okay, I hope they don't like kind of harp on this too much. Like don't get me wrong, the way that they utilize it as far as like, how like kind of the factoring in like real world politics and kind of a little bit of the history that goes into it about how like they kind of basically made it like, yeah, that shit about leaking, crack cocaine into minorities in the 80s. That was very deliberate on the government's part. Shit that like anybody with common sense could figure out. But like there was definitely some sort of, I feel like, a lot of credence that came from kind of hearing it voiced open, especially from Mother's Milk, who very much has this personal vendetta against Soldier Boy in kind of a similar way that Butcher does with Homelander. But
yeah,
biggest thing for me also is, so he's just got those scars forever, and that's why he just doesn't talk. Like so he never healed from them, like never. And the other thing too, also just being what's it called? Soldier Boy just vanishes from that fight. I'm like, so they clearly kidnapped him, whatever weapon it was. Like that's the problem, is Mallory was unfortunately knocked out when that firefight happened. But whatever firefight,
they said they took his body too,
right?
And then they were like, he died, but they took his body, and I was like, what?
Yeah, pretty much. So that's kind of where I was like, I'm not really sure where this is going per se, but I think it's interesting. And like I said, it's still very much set up. Like it's still set it. Like that's the thing that I like about them releasing the first 3 episodes, is that they kind of, it's all the expositions, so they kind of get it all out of the way, so that the next 5 weeks of episodes, they're going to slowly fill you in on information. So that was kind of the big thing there. We covered the Homelander and Starlight bit. Huey, for me, has been completely, like, done a complete 180 on me, where Huey, I was constantly complaining about how he's too emasculated. He's kind of being led around a lot by other characters. The first season, they were able to get away with it because we're still being introduced to this world. But the second season, I thought it was getting a little bit irritated. But this third season, I got to say, like, Jack Quaid's always been great in this part, but Jack Quaid really, really impressed me with this season, kind of his turnaround, where he's kind of playing with the big leagues now. He's a little bit more fine. He's in a little bit of a position of power. And I think he's handled himself surprisingly well. And also like how he's able to, like, he's a lot quicker. Like those years of being with Butcher have really, had an effect on him. He's quicker. He's smarter. He's thinking more on his feet. He's realizing like what's what. And like, honestly, like it's crazy because going into these 3 episodes, like Butcher and Homelander were always going to be the win. But if you told me that like I was going to come out and be like rooting for Huey and saying that Huey like had like one of the best arcs, like I would have told you were crazy, because I've been very vocal since day one about how I'm not the biggest fan of Huey as a character. But man, they really turned it around for me. They really did. I cannot wait to see what they do with Huey this year, and I'm hoping they don't do him dirty like they probably will with the whole Hitman Starlight thing.
She's frustrating, Starlight, the way they write her sometimes regarding Huey, but she is put in an impossible situation. I will say that, and it's going to be interesting how they resolve that, no matter how they do it. But like that Newman character, I don't know what's going to go on with this show.
Me neither. But that to me is it's the Newman character, the finding out more about the origin and the Soldier Boy, and then everything happening with Homelander. Those to me are like the 3 real areas of interest that I'm like, yeah, this is where the drama is going to be at this season, And the biggest thing too also, as far as Starlight goes, I mean, that's kind of been Starlight's thing since day one. She's always been the character that's constantly put in this impossible scenario. They radically changed her character from the comics, where the comics, she's kind of this ditzy, like she really is. She's not like how Erin Moriarty plays her. She is this ditzy, kind of really dumb fangirl. She's like an Instagram star that just gets completely emotionally destroyed. And kind of, when the deep assault happens in the comics. And I feel they've definitely been the most repetitive with her character, where her whole thing is she is constantly the character that is trying to go against the mold, go against all of that. And she's constantly screwed over and over again. Like first with the whole trying to give a voice to, assault victims, only for Vought to then turn it around on her. Then the whole girls get it done and how that paid off at the end of the season. In hindsight, I'm still not quite sure if that worked out as well as I think it would have. And now this season, where you essentially have this forced love square, as you said, between the supersonic guy or whatever his name was and the pop band guy from back in the day, and then Homelander. And now it's like, okay, so she's once again just got to play face with the Seven while Huey's off doing a mission. Like, I don't know. Like, I definitely feel like she's a character that they're starting to run out of things to do with. But
I think they're running out of ideas for like A-Train and the Deep. I feel like every scene with the Deep is just kind of like, I get it. Like, dude, you're pathetic and you're dumb. And it's like, especially the way like he bullies both of them, right? In the same episode, or like an episode separated from it. I don't know. But like this season, he's like bullied both of them to their faces, like it's like a fucking elementary school student. And it's kind of like, all right.
The thing with the Deep is that they are constantly just going out of their way to, like, they've literally like, okay, he's a joke character, so we're just going to treat him as a joke character. Where it's like they constantly bringing back the bit of him just being so emotionally destroyed every time it's like a fish talking. And it's like they did the shit with the octopus and here, and it's like, and then they had the thing with like his wife, which I was like, what the fuck is going on with that character? Where she's like, oh, eat the stupid octopus. I'm like, what? I'm like, I'm like, I thought you were supposed to be on his side. I thought you were supposed to be rooting for him. Like, you should be on the Deep side, not Homelander's side. Like, what's going on here? So I was,
because Dominic, you don't get it. They're all gonna die if they don't do what he says.
Oh, that's right. Oh, that's right. Because that point hasn't been hammered into our heads enough as it is. And then obviously, the whole thing with A-Train, and then him rightfully being called out by his brother, where he's like, I'm just trying to give back to the community after the whole, because the Stormfront thing clearly rattled him. But I liked his brother character, where his brother rightfully pointed out, it's like, dude, you've never cared about the community. You have only ever cared about yourself and getting yourself elevated to a new position. So don't try and lie to that. So I thought that was cool, but I'll be interested.
He didn't care about the cause because he killed a black girl in the first episode.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
That's all. Crime.
Not that he realized that, but yeah, that's 100% true. Yeah, little intra-racial crime right there. Absolutely. Yeah. So biggest thing is that's kind of where we're being set up with. That's kind of where we're going. So my biggest thing is that kind of after further recontextualizing these 3 episodes, it's always so interesting when you get something that like is so awesome in the moment, and then you go back and kind of re-examine it and break it down. And you're like, was this?
I feel like they think he's a joke too, especially with that costume they give him this season.
Yeah, so like what is that costume? That is even by superhero costume standards. I know it's intentionally done to look terrible, but like it just looks like a color vomited all over him.
It's like that's the African colors. It's like the Pan-African colors.
Yeah, but I got that, but like I don't think they're not organized in any way that like makes sense. And so I'm like, every time I look at it, I'm like, it's just like a hodgepodge. Like they literally just mash it all together and just put no effort into it, But I don't know. That's really all I can say as far as those first 3 episodes go. I'm super interested to see where they're going to go. Like you said, it's the fact that that's the thing about the show is it is truly unpredictable in the sense that you never, ever know where what direction they're going to take. They just, every time you think that they can get to a point where you don't think they can surprise you anymore, they pull out something else where you're like, oh man, like they had the shrinking dude from the first episode of the show when Butcher is first bringing Huey into that like underground, what's it called? That club or whatever. And then they bring that back in a great way. The only thing that I'm not quite sure about where they're going is the whole Frenchie with the little Nina character. Like what that's going to serve, if that plot line is
shitty crime subplot. That's
lame. I did my whole hope with that is I hope they don't drag that out and bring that back into the show where it's like they're trying to set it up where it's like, again, Frenchie and Kimiko, their whole thing is it's like that storyline was never a storyline that had much longevity to that, and I have a bad feeling that they're going to kind of like stretch that out continuously, the constant back and forth of, oh, Kimiko wants a normal life, oh, Frenchie loves her, but he's still kind of addicted to this lifestyle, and oh, they're going to have to, get out at some point. I'm just like, oh, okay, I get it. I like the Frenchie actor. Kimiko definitely grew on me more in season 2 after her, I think, kind of abrupt introduction in season 1. But yeah, so I'll be interested to see what they do with that. So,
What about like what happens to that like I forgot that actress you were saying who played the one at the
Lori
Disneyland,
Holden, yeah.
yeah,
Yeah,
when
and how
she
she
like
just killed the
kills.
mascot out of nowhere and then just left. Like, what happened with that? I
What's the
was so confused.
repercussions there?
Nah, no. I mean, Vought will probably come in and clean it up because that's just what they do with every superhero. I mean, they've got to bring her back at some point, because again, like we have Butcher killing the gunpowder dude, and then you have
That was wild.
that was not that was so cool. And then when they showed like the head falling off at the end, oh, that was so good. Like that brought it back to like the Haley Joel Osment kill in season 1 when Butcher killed him. And that was the first one where you're like, oh, this is what Butcher's really into. You're like, because up until that point, like, Butcher had done some crazy shit, like, with the translucent, but it was always, like, somebody who deserved it and really had it coming. But, like, the Haley Joel Osment moment where you just see what, like, kind of a pathetic character that is, and when Butcher brutally kills him, I was like, wow, okay, like, there really is like kind of just these moral gray areas on both sides. Like the boys, because they introduce you like the boys are all people who have been screwed over in some way, shape, or form by the Supes. Frenchie obviously with his overhanging guilt about letting Mallory's family get killed by Lamplighter. Mother's Milk obviously with his whole thing with with Soldier Boy, and then how that resulted in the death of his family and his dad. And then obviously Butcher with Becca, and then Huey with his ex-girlfriend Robin, and all that. And obviously everything that happened with Kamiko and everything there. But so that's always kind of been interesting how those characters all kind of are disenfranchised and screwed over. But like, it's always been fascinating how they built up to where it's like, nah, those guys might be just as fucked up as the Supes are, in this sense. And I think they've done a much better job of that in the comics, because I know in the comics, those characters like Frenchie and Mother's Milk were really just like kind of dumb side characters, and like they were really side characters. And Huey really was just kind of Huey really was just, kind of like more of a hacker figure and more of a plot device character. Like Butcher really is the center character in the comics. Like I will say, if you get a chance, just read like the opening couple panels from the first volume of The Boys comic, volume 1. That shit is wild what they do.
Is Huey in the comic like supposed to be British?
Yes, Huey in the comics is modeled after Simon Pegg. That's why in that one anime with Huey, like that's their comic iteration. Like Huey is very much based off of and supposed to be a version of Simon Pegg, which is why it was so interesting when they cast Simon Pegg as his dad obviously in the first season of the show.
I'm not crazy about that character. I don't think his American accent's that bad. I just don't like that character.
Yeah, it was kind of like kind of diminutive, kind of what they did to that character. But that's it. That's really our conversation of The Boys. Your final thoughts and star ratings on these first 3 episodes?
Oh, this is a strong. I'll do a fucking schmoes no kind of rating. I'll do a 4.37 out of 5. I think it's very good. I wish I could rate it higher, but like just maybe I will in retrospect, depending on how they tie up these plots. But yeah, very interesting stuff. The violence is unparalleled on any television show right now. That's for sure. There's nothing as violent and as gory and as crazy and as cool looking as The Boys right now, especially for a superhero show. It's crazy that they can, Invincible. It's the same guys who did Invincible, right? But like that's animated. I feel like like The Boys makes Invincible kind of just kind of makes it feel like dispensable in my opinion. Like I just feel like this is just such an epic grand scale, and that one, like it makes sense for that one to be animated.
Well, because the whole thing about The Boys is they could so easily just rely on the shock value of the kills, but it's the fact that they actually go out of their way to like have these interesting story tidbits that build up to it, and it gives us so much.
And
more
the world building is very good too, because it feels so grounded in its own reality, and it feels eerily similar to like how reality actually is for us, in my opinion. I'm not like with the superpowers, obviously.
No.
But like I feel like this is how people would react.
Yes, and that's always been the best element of the show, is the fact of really capturing that thought of what if superheroes really existed in real life and how just fucking terrifying that would be, frankly. And this show just kind of takes that.
And that's why the violence is so effective, is because of how real-ish it comes across and how like genuine it feels in its own style. But yeah, I really love this show, and I hope it gets even better. Anthony Starr deserves an Emmy for this.
Yeah, still incredible. A crying shame how he was. I still have no idea how last year during the COVID Emmy season, when there was no TV, how they gave 18,000 nominations to The Crown and The Handmaid's, to all the actors in The Crown and The Handmaid's Tale, and Anthony, they couldn't cover out two spots for Carl Urban and Anthony Starr. Couldn't do that. But I mean, look, the boys still got a drama nomination, so I'm hoping it's able to compete next year. I'm hoping they don't completely shut it out. Summer shows, I know, always have a tougher time competing at the Emmys than the shows.
That second season was so good. They were like, we have to.
Yeah, we have to nominate it. Yeah, we have to nominate it. Like, but it still pisses me off that like they couldn't give the actress a nomination. I loved it. I love these first 3 episodes. Kind of individual problems as they were. Again, it's not a perfect show, but it's one of the best shows on the air right now. Obviously, if you're not watching it, like, what are you doing? It's all on Amazon. Go watch this shit. It is awesome. I give this 4.5 out of 5 stars. Yeah, I'm confident with that. 4.5 out of 5 stars for these first 3 episodes. We'll see how the next 5 weeks go as far as, keeping track of it. I might do some TikTok reactions for it. I'm not quite sure. You guys can follow us all there at Official Talking TV Podcast across all the platforms: Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, TikTok, Letterboxd, all the usual. Dustin, where can the good people follow you?
You can follow me on Letterboxd, Dustin Mason, YouTube, and Twitter. Mr. G Movie Reviews on YouTube, Duster on Twitter. He'll give you the links.
Awesome. And of course, you can follow me at Movie Nerd Reviews across all platforms. And as always, people, 12 seasons in a short film, and watch more fucking movies. We'll see you guys next time.